Good morning, and welcome to Supply Chain Now Radio. We are broadcasting live today from the supply chain capital of the East Coast, Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Scott Luton. I'm your host for today's session. In our webinar today, we're going to be learning more about one of the fastest growing and ever more critical areas of the modern day supply chain, reverse logistics. With the explosion of e-commerce, supply chains must be able to effectively execute reverse logistics. Our featured presenter today is Tony Sciarrotta, Executive Director of the Reverse Logistics Association. More about Tony in just a moment. But as always, we're glad to have you with us here today on Supply Chain Now Radio. So first, let's tackle our ground rules. All attendees will be on mute as we're looking to optimize the audio experience. Now, with that said, let's make it as interactive as possible. Please do submit your questions via the chat toolbar. We'll answer as many as we have time for at the conclusion of today's webinar. And finally, a PDF of today's presentation and recording will be sent out in the next few days to each of our registrants. So let's take a minute to recognize our sponsors here on Supply Chain Now Radio. Special thanks to our sponsor, TalentStream, a recruiting and staffing firm that specializes in helping organizations find top talent in the engineering, the manufacturing, and the supply chain space. To learn more, visit us at talentstreamstaffing.com. And special thanks to our sponsor, APICS Atlanta, which has been serving the Metro Atlanta community since 1964. For those of you new to APICS, it is the premier industry association dedicated to end-to-end supply chain management. Around the world, our organization serves over 45,000 members. APICS offers membership and professional development, a wide range of education opportunities, industry-leading research and publications, and widely recognized professional certifications. To learn more, visit us at apicsatlanta.org. Okay, so let's share a little more information about our speaker today. You're in for a treat. We have Mr. Tony Sciarrotta. Tony has held a variety of sales, marketing, and service positions in the consumer electronics industry for over 30 years. This includes a senior leadership role at Phillips from 1988 through 2013. Beginning in 1998, Tony began a returns management department and focused Phillips on activities to reduce returns and their costs. Tony has worked with global retailers and internal business groups to implement returns initiatives that became best-in-class industry practices. He also took responsibility for maximizing asset recovery of all returned consumer products. Since Phillips, Tony has continued to consult and evangelize for improvements to consumer products to reduce returns and to improve reverse logistics activities through his new role as Executive Director for the Reverse Logistics Association. The RLA is the only global trade group for the reverse logistics industry since 2002. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Tony Sciarrotta.
Thank you very much, Scott. Hello, everyone, and appreciate everyone signing in and your time today to go through an area of high importance to all of us. Whether you're an earth steward or just looking for a job, this is such an important area of reverse logistics, and it is a niche that needs to be talked about and dealt with and represents tremendous opportunities for everyone. But let's get into what it's about and why it's becoming a bigger opportunity. So with that said, we'll go to the first slide here, and let's talk about the changing world. This overview says it's easy, making it easy for people to shop online, and they are doing it in droves, but they will return much higher percentage of the sales versus the 8 to 9% in the actual stores. It could be 2 to 3 times the average brick and mortar rates as listed here. 25 to 35% return rates are not uncommon for e-commerce retailers. And in this session, we will discuss the growing omnichannel returns and service issues, the e-commerce and the IoT effects, and the impact of the consumer purchase and the delivery experience. But first, let's talk about the industry. Recent survey by Supply Chain Management Review magazine, along with the RLA, along with the WERC Association, says a couple of important things. First, do companies even know how much reverse logistics is saving their company? Are they able to determine that? And as you can see here, about 75% of them are either not sure or not seeing the savings. How is the e-commerce growth impacting your reverse logistics processes? Of course, the biggest bar is the number of returns have increased. It's affecting their ability to manage the reverse logistics operations and other. Is your company prepared for what's growing? Only about 28% say they're really prepared. The rest are either not at all or not even sure, and that's an indication of some serious brick walls ahead that we're all going to run into. Because the internet has changed and the market trends have changed. What's going on today is that many of the purchase experiences are happening through mobile access, no longer desktop. That changed a couple of years ago with the advent and proliferation of smartphones all over the place. So we have to recognize that millennials, as well as many, many others of us, are doing our shopping and our internet experience through smartphones, through access online without going to our desktop or laptops. So the market need has been to create new delivery products. A tremendous need there for having a differentiated delivery experience. And that means, for example, do you want products delivered to your home when you work in an office? Maybe, maybe not. Do you want things delivered on the weekends and the evenings when you're at home? So that's targeting segments of how to change the delivery experience. Of course, the product design needs to focus on speed and new features, get it out there. Same-day solutions are happening. Who would have imagined this in the supply chain world, even as little as 5 years ago, that we could have same-day solutions? Secure delivery and speed are very important to urban customers who live in large apartment buildings. How do you make sure that things left at the front porch don't become a victim of the porch pirates that are out there? Dynamic rerouting is being well received. And again, these are all supply chain basics, important to know about, but FedEx and UPS are now allowing rerouting from your home to your office, from your office to your home, making those changes. And most important is about these late evening and weekend deliveries are becoming a regular thing. So this is on the forward side. Fulfillment services are important. The ultimate goal, same-day delivery. So some of the trends that have happened, the inventory optimization. How do you keep things in a warehouse in the center of the country and find a way to do same-day delivery or even a next-day delivery? So there's been a shifting from in the retail marketplace, which is a very large marketplace. As a side note, it's a 5 trillion plus economy that we have just in the US. But now there's been ways of how much to ship from store, how much inventory to have on hand, and the store allows the fastest delivery. Everything from you could shop at a Macy's department store in one portion of Atlanta, and they tell, this experience has happened. They tell me that the jacket that I want is not available in my size in the store that I'm at, but it's available at the Stone Mountain store. They give me the choice. Do I want to go there? Maybe I live in that direction, or do I want the store to send it to me, which also is a possibility. And that's an amazing level of service that's being provided these days by many of the brick and mortar retailers. It's their way of competing with some of the online, but it also represents online opportunity that when I go online and order from the Walmarts and Macy's and Best Buys, they'll tell me it's at this store, we can have it to you tomorrow, the next day, possibly even the same day. As Walmart, for example, strives to use their own employees to become Uber drivers and deliver packages from the store to people's homes. So these are basics that supply chain people are very familiar with. Some of the last trends, last mile trends are coming. The drop ships, buy online, pick up on store, Of course, the drones are coming, things like that. So these are trends that are increasing the volume of online e-commerce business, even though it's a hybrid of forward methods being used today and new methods that are coming. But here's the basics. Returns are the rule. I spent 25 years at Phillips, and in those years, we never seemed to quite get it at the beginning that you have to plan for returns at the onset. And here's what's happening today. Not only should you be planning for returns, but let's talk about some of these effects that I was referring to earlier. The E effect. It's not just Amazon, but e-commerce is growing. E-commerce today, it's not in this slide, but I usually ask this question of groups to raise their hand when they think we've hit a level of, are we over 20% of our business in the US is over e-commerce? Is it 15%? Is it 10%? Or is it a higher number? E-commerce represents little less than 10% of the retail economy in the United States today. And it's lower in other countries. It's roughly around 9%. And if we call the economy, a retail economy, $5.5 trillion economy, then you can see that sales are going to reach about $500 billion in e-commerce this year, but it continues to grow at a faster pace than anything else. It is taking away from brick and mortar, but it's also adding and increasing. I said it earlier, we'll say it again. Returns are 2 to 3 times the brick and mortar rates. And the buyers on e-commerce are expecting a no hassle, cross-channel, free freight, and unlimited return policies. We are a culture of entitlement. So the E effect is also the entitlement effect. People have expected no hassle returns, and the e-commerce companies that are trying to become successful are using free return freight, free returns forever as a sledgehammer to kind of gain some ground and business from the traditional brick and mortar. The effect of the increased returns is not always felt at these e-tailers because it can be in separate silos. The freight cost might not be visible as part of the margin. It might be in a different P&L. The call center hassles that may go on when people are looking for answers is buried in the service organization and so on. So the E effect is, of course, about e-commerce, but it's also about the entitlement that the consumers feel because they're being led down that road by the expectations of set by, of course, the king of that hill is Amazon, not unlike the Walmart liberal return policies of many, many years now that anything could be returned at the store almost any time. So that effect is just continuation of what was done at retail. The E effect will continue to drive returns high, and that's a part of the reverse logistics picture. We also have something called the IoT effect. If that's a new term to you, the IoT is a reference to the Internet of Things, or a reference to where everything is connected. And sometimes we think of that as an opportunity. Data is king. The example I use about the Internet of Things, one of the most common changing examples, is that you might own a pair of shoes or a purse that has internet connectivity in it. It's tracking where you're going, how many steps you're taking, and it tells perhaps your smartphone, perhaps your smartwatch, what you're doing, where you're at, and that may transfer that information back to your computer, which kind of may connect to a health and fitness program that you installed. And in fact, it may even tell your doctor what kind of fitness program results you've got on a daily basis. Some of this sounds a little scary. Some of this sounds kind of interesting. The fact is, we're being tracked. We're being tracked by the Internet of Things more so than the government ever imagined it would do. And in this connectivity world, interoperability is critical. And as of today, the Internet of Things has over 300 variations so far, and products may not talk to each other. Therefore, returns become even higher with IoT products. An example that I pull from the history books, not that far history, when MP3 came about, people were buying MP3 players from Apple, from Phillips, from Sony, from many, many companies, and they were connecting it to the internet to download music. But when you connect it to iTunes, and then you tried to download music from iTunes and later perhaps from Windows Media or Napster or any of the other programs offering music, they didn't talk to each other. Return rates for MP3 players in the early 2000s went as high as 40% plus. At that point, you have to say, is it even worth putting a product like that on the market? So we're not there today with IoT, but what happened with MP3 is, and other products, connected products, something called universal plug and play took over. Universal plug and play allows all products to immediately talk to each other, recognize each other, giving you a better experience as a consumer. And that's what it's about, the experience effect. Many, many consumers prefer the experience now of buying online, but again, it comes with a cost. And in the next couple years, we will see that the amount of online returns will overtake the brick and mortar returns. And you can see the tipping line looks like 2022. The indications are it may be even sooner than that. So what's going on in the reverse logistics world and what are the needs there? Let's talk about that next because that's affecting us in ways we're not even seeing yet. One is the efficiency of reverse logistics. A couple of examples there, of course, would be the receiving of returns. It's very labor intensive. Most of you may work in a forward supply chain world where you've got beautiful pallets of beautiful uniform boxes that are shrink wrapped, picked up by a forklift, loaded onto a truck, and they go out nice and clean and easy. We have the opposite effect in returns. Every pallet of returns is going to be perhaps 100 different products. Many of them won't be in their original box. Some of them won't be in their box at all. And it's very labor intensive. And there's not a lot of value add when you're taking these pallets apart. But we're finding we have to increase this capacity. One of the limitations can be that the throughput in a DC is limited because their goal is to ship forward thousands and thousands of packages and not shift through hundreds of boxes of return goods to identify them. So many retailers and e-tailers have set up their own return centers or they have a third-party partner, and that is a factor of how do you decide what products go where? And how do you direct those products? Traditional labeling has been a limiting factor, and we'll talk about a smart QR label option that's out there, and we'll show that in a few slides. But millennials and other people ordering online from their telephone, they don't want to be told that they need to get a return authorization label and print it out before they can send a product back. That's been very inefficient. So many of the e-tailers are partnering. If you're watching some of the news, they're partnering up with people like the Kohl's of the world. So Amazon returns in the Chicago area can be dropped off at a Kohl's store, and they handle the label, the printing, the packing, and it goes out of Kohl's back room to Amazon. So there's some changes coming like that. Walmart announced a mobile application for a return, so that all you do is create it on the mobile app and go drop it off at the store. And the store, when they receive it and process it, confirms back to your phone that that return's been processed. And why is this a big issue? Because a reverse logistics, a return, is money. It's dollars that have been put into the cloud, basically. And until you get those dollars back, you're not a happy person. and you won't buy something else until you get your money back. So a lot of the e-tailers are finding that they have to also find a way to credit the return as immediately as possible. All of these things happen in a warehouse environment that's generally not equipped for that. Another issue about reverse logistics is all of these returns have to go somewhere. We don't want them to go to landfills. We don't want them to go into the trash. So as the return products come back, those have to be dispositioned as immediately as possible to increase the yield and the asset recovery, because that's a part of the end-to-end cost of reverse logistics. And the leading edge companies recognize that. They know that if they're getting laptops and mobile phones and tablets and other electronics products back, that the faster they can turn them around, get them back into the marketplace, the higher the recovery. Electronics tend to not age well. Clothing, a little different scenario. The aging isn't a factor, but the markdowns are a major factor. Now that's built into the pricing in many respects, but the major clothing manufacturers know that their products that go into the Targets and the Walmarts and even the Nordstroms of the world are going to end up somewhere after they've been returned. Return rates are high. They have to have a good strategy for what to do with those returns. It can be anything from removing the label of the brand because they don't want it in the secondary market with their label on it. It could be negotiating returns of clothing that can be donated to charities, and that provides a tax write-off for certain companies. So there's a lot of ways that the returns have to be dealt with and dispositioned. And yes, that becomes a factor of a reverse logistics manager. If you only know about moving packages, that's a piece of the pie. That's a part of the puzzle. But if you're able to help your company find avenues and outlets for where these returns can go that can provide a higher recovery, that's a benefit that you can offer an employer, your employer, and it is a major cost center right now that companies are looking for relief on. So the DCs that are out there today, they need to be flexible because they're servicing e-commerce and retail, and that is its own challenge. And again, labels are a factor of that. Where is this product going? The automation methods that are needed for returns processing are beginning to surface. This is where artificial intelligence actually can help. An AI example is that the returns processing of products and garments and shoes and other small appliances and so on can be driven down a belt with artificial intelligence understanding what the product needs to look like brand new and make a decision. Can that product be resold as new? Can it be resold as a return with a markdown? Does it have scratches on it that need to be cleaned? Does it become a grade B because there's too many scratches? Does it become a grade C because it has a crack in it and needs to be refurbished? AI can help make this process go better. The challenge there, of course, is today the average warehouse worker is making that decision. It's a subjective decision. In the future, AI will make that decision less subjective, which affects the yield and the return rates, the asset recovery rates. If there's good grading, then those products can be resold. If the grading is not done very well, then those products are liquidated or scrapped, and that can be costly as well. Again, we talked about the same-day processing and disposition is the ultimate goal. When you're getting electronics back that have a short life expectancy because the new model is coming out next month or in 3 months or in 6 months, your goal is to take those products, process them, disposition them immediately, and have a buyer on the other side of the building ready to ship it to. So that's becoming critical. Analytics will help here, predictive analytics about when to expect certain quantities of returns and line up the buyers at the other end. Reverse logistics is that entire end-to-end process. Now, the good news is that 95% of the return goods can be resold in the secondary marketplace. So when we talk about that large reverse logistics market, not everything goes back into the secondary marketplace. Many of the products can be put back on the shelf and they'll never be seen in that reverse logistics chain. But the 200 to 250 billion of products that are coming back to a different disposition center ultimately can be resold. In other words, if products are being sold at the Targets, Sears, Best Buys, Walmarts of the world, when they come back, they can wind up being sold in the Big Lots, the Ollie's Bargain Outlet, the Bargain Hunt stores, the secondary marketplace, and even online. And the last part about the last 5% of those return goods is we want to make sure they're recycled responsibly. This is a lot of ground to cover in a reverse logistics discussion. And that's what makes it an important niche and a growing niche. And the need for people who have experience with all of these is huge. There are not enough recycling centers. There's not enough dispositioning centers. There's not enough online retailers for the secondary market, but it's getting there. And that's why becoming a jack of all trades in the reverse logistics area is critical. Now, when we talk about the reverse logistics marketplace, the secondary marketplace, we should talk about the new business models that are out there. Important to notice that Amazon is launching a renewed marketplace. They are actually certifying partners to be an opportunity of taking return goods, refurbished goods, processed returns, and offer them on the Amazon renewed marketplace and provide the same customer experience that you get when you buy Amazon new. You're going to see more and more of that. Of course, companies like Hewlett-Packard and Dell and Phillips and Sony already offer some of those products that they call certified pre-owned, and they offer them directly to consumers, and that's out there. And then, as I mentioned, there are retailers who are specialists in that. In addition to certification as a partner, whether it's an Amazon partner for the renewed or whether it's a Walmart partner, there are certain standards out there that the return processors can meet. R2 is a fairly well-known, well-established certification, and the R2 standard started out as a government standard in the United States. It's managed by an organization called SERI, the Sustainable Electronics Reuse Institute, SERI.org. They manage the R2 certification. This is important because we don't think about the fact that our return products, such as, we think about it with computers and phones and tablets, but they've got our passwords, they may have our banking information, they've got a lot of private information on it. But when you think about electronics now, you have to think past electronics. Your Fitbit might have your credit card number on it because you registered for a premium service. Your Nintendo game system, your PlayStation, they all may have private information on it that you input at one time or another with a password, and you're not even thinking that those products have your data, but they do. And as I said, in the future, it could be a Michael Kors purse with IoT in it. It could be the Nike sneakers with a connectivity in it. So the R2 certification is becoming more and more important because we want to make sure that all of our data is wiped out from those return products. There's also ISO standards out there that are helping to ensure the products are wiped clean and that they are reloaded and recertified with the original operating software or the latest version thereof. So ISO standards are out there. And again, to repeat that this is important because 95% of these returns are being sold. I mentioned shoes, I mentioned purses, but there's also connectivity in clothing. There's jackets out there with IoT. So there's a lot of products that we don't even think about it. We go to our computer or we go to our smartphone and it says, hey, I'm that new jacket you bought. If you want to connect to your health and fitness program, sign in, give us a password, give us your credit card in case you ever want to buy a premium service, and you've done it. So this is actually an important aspect of reverse logistics. Another important aspect are all of the decision makings that have to occur with liquidation. You have to recognize these are brand and financial decisions. Do you sell it on eBay? Well, maybe you can do it as a personal sale, but if you happen to own Microsoft Surface Computer, do you want to sell it on eBay yourself if you haven't wiped it clean? Or do you want to sell it on Craigslist? Now there's also the Amazon Marketplace. Each one of these markets, whether it's Amazon, Craigslist, eBay, secondary market retailers like the Big Lots of the world, or overseas, these are all financial decisions and brand decision. Do you want your brand sold as a manufacturer into the secondary market? Do you want to send it overseas? This is an end-to-end development that you have to think about. And if you're a reverse logistics manager, if you're in the reverse logistics supply chain, you have to be part of making this decision. And again, these decisions on what to do with the returns are brand and financial decision making. I can give you examples of some companies that perhaps they make a product like a shaver, and the decision is when it comes back and it's returned, they don't want to have any medical or health risks connected to it, no matter what amount of cleaning you might do. So those products might be recycled and scrapped so that they can't possibly re-enter the marketplace. Because again, if you're a brand name of any kind, whether it's, again, a consumer product such as Phillips or Norelco or the Magnavoxes or the Sonys of the world, any of those products, Samsung and LG, do you want those products which have your name on it to go back in the marketplace where you will still be taking care of people who buy those products because they're going to call your call center for help? One of those interesting stories out there is a lot of the returns world and reverse logistics world began, let's say, more than 100 years ago when a retailer called Sears put on their front door, satisfaction guaranteed. And what they offered with their Craftsman tools was a lifetime warranty. So theoretically, 90 years, 100 years later, you bought a Sears Craftsman hammer, you could bring it back to the store and get a replacement. And what Sears did in many years ago was to burn off the Craftsman name and allow those products to be sold in other markets in other parts of the world. That was one approach. So they protected their Craftsman name by burning off. HP followed a similar process where their computers were returned, all of the evidence of HP's name was removed, and the products were sold in other markets to other retailers. So there's a lot of decision making that goes on, and you need some financial experience in the reverse logistics managerial roles that will make you more important to your company, because you're going to help decide whether an allowance should be offered or take a return back to your own facilities or direct a return back to other processing centers. So asset recovery becomes an important aspect. And in the supply chain world, when you go through certifications programs, you are learning a lot about financing and financial decisions, but the decisions are almost the opposite on the return side in terms of analyzing what it's going to cost you, because some of the costs are hidden, and the best reverse logistics managers will explore the end-to-end costs: transport in, processing, transport out, ultimate sales, ultimate warranties to those end products, and so on. And a good reverse logistics manager, and the value that I was able to add to Phillips, was finding ways to reduce returns. Because ultimately, it is about that customer experience. Many people think that returns are driven by a product failure, and nothing could be further from the truth. The returns that are tracked and tested and reviewed and renewed, many companies will tell you that 90% of them have no technical failure. In other words, when tested and inspected and triaged and diagnosed, the technical answer is there's nothing wrong with this product. So that means something went wrong with the customer experience, that they took the product back or they sent it back. Now, there's a number of anecdotes about why products are returned. One of our members of RLA, Best Buy, did some analytics and discovered that the highest returns came from people who were buying goods between 10 p.m. at night and 1 a.m. in the morning. They think that might have been a hangover effect. The other type of return, of course, the notorious Super Bowl returns, when people were buying big screens for the Super Bowl game and then returning them shortly thereafter. That was an expensive return learning. And of course, the spouse acceptance factor. The product gets to your front porch and your partner says, what did you order and when and why? And that product goes back. But it really comes down to trying to give a better message about the products. Deliver a better message, promise and deliver, and the packaging needs to give the same consistent message. And that is one of the basic ways to return it. Because most returns, and we did surveys at Phillips, we actually asked people, why did you return this? The number one message was it didn't do what they expected it to do. This is an important aspect of reverse logistics. There's other opportunities to reduce returns, such as the concierge program that's offered at certain warehouse clubs, where instead of taking the return, they offer to help you on a call center. Years ago, call centers were looked at as an expense. Now it's understood that call centers can be a consumer experience improvement, and it can help reduce unnecessary and unwarranted returns. People open up their products at home when they're inside of a box, and they can see a stop sheet or a welcome sheet, and it's a message that's important. Nowadays, there's FAQs, the frequently asked questions. There's a quick start guide when you open a package, big pictures, simple explanations. That's been found to reduce returns. And ultimately, the serial number tracking wherever it's possible. Serial number tracking allows retailers to make sure that the tablet or the phone or the computer or other electronics products that they're taking back are the products that were sold in the first place. This is an important program that's out there in high numbers. So we'll move on to just a few more slides related to what are the packaging issues that are out there today. And one of the newest opportunities is that the QR codes and the QR labels that are found on many packages can be enhanced so that the QR label will offer on your phone all of those guidelines on the picture there. So for example, if you bought an Apple computer, you take it home, you take a picture of the QR label, or even in the store before you buy it, gives you the option of registration, of setup, of frequently asked questions, of accessories you might need. So there's an opportunity now for every consumer with a phone to get in more information, because the specialized QR label, QR1 here, which is an ANSI standard and becoming a global standard, has about 20 times the amount of data storage as a standard QR label, and will offer the opportunity for a single swipe at the point of sale, and the retailer then can track that this particular product is the one that they sold on a particular date. It allows the customer to get more information. It reduces fraud. It can be used in a warehouse, which today, warehouses for fulfillment of e-commerce sales are being forced to scan multiple labels. And we'll show this on the next couple slides. Here's an example of all the different kinds of labels that can be applied to a package. And this is just from the US Postal Service. Each courier, whether it's FedEx, DHL, UPS, they also use different labels. So you can wind up with a lot of barcodes on a package, and it really creates complexity in the reverse chain and the forward chain. The opportunity is there for one label to do it all, and that label is becoming a standard and is being looked at by many major companies so that one label can do it all. That's one of the examples of things that are done at the RLA, and we're going to have time for some questions, so I will wrap up some of our slides here by letting everyone know that the Reverse Logistics Association has been around for about 15 years. The members are retail companies from Amazon to Walmart on a global basis. The members are also manufacturers, whether it's Acer to Westinghouse and every kind of consumer product in between. And then the third group of members would be the third-party solutions providers, companies who offer software solutions, consultants, supply chain management organizations such as XPO or CH Robinson, who help manage returns flow as well. They can be also refurbishment companies who do repair to the standards required by the manufacturers so that those products become certified refurbished goods that can be made available. So the organization has been around for about 15 years. The goal is to promote best practices in reverse logistics. You just saw a number of them on the screen. And I just want to mention that you can go to the website, rla.org, click on the register button and become a new user in the Reverse Logistics Association at no cost. Membership is available for companies, not individuals, a little different type of an association, but that's the RLA, and we offer solutions, information, committees that talk every month about new ideas, new adventures in reducing returns, new ways to process returns, and new ways to collect a higher recovery for return goods. It's a very important area and important industry. And Scott, I think I've wrapped through most of these slides. I'll bring you back on and we can start to consider taking some questions.
Terrific. Thanks, Tony. Great presentation. Appreciate you joining us. All right, so to our audience, we're going to take the next few minutes and take questions from our audience. We already have several submitted, Tony, and we're going to start with those. So the first question that I want to pose to you, Tony. Tony, this comes from Janine. And Janine asks that some companies, for example, JCPenney, recently introduced blocks against consumers for returns, even with a receipt. So Tony, do you expect more companies to engage in this phenomenon? More importantly, how does this impact the ability of a company to retain/grow customers, as this action may be viewed as very negative?
Those are good questions and important ones, because JCPenney is not the only one who's done that. We've seen in the news in the last 6 months, perhaps, Land's End announced a reduction of their lifetime warranty on their purchases, and they limited it to 1 year, which sounds like enough time, but there was some negative reaction because of the way it was presented. Amazon has now been found to deny some returns from certain people, and they're in the club with JCPenney, Best Buy, and others. But let's qualify that. The ones that are being blocked are typically the cases of either fraudulent concerns or serial returners. Now, the reason for the block is in my presentation. If you understand that the returns are being liquidated and could be resold in anything from a Big Lots to a bargain outlet to a bargain hunt store to a Salvation Army store, those products could, I won't say the right person, but the wrong type of person could take advantage of the liberal returns policies and take products back that they didn't even buy at the particular retailer and take them back for a refund. Now, JCPenney, Best Buy, Amazon, or others, this is the good and bad about data tracking. They're tracking individuals, and they know, even if they show up with a receipt, that certain individuals have practiced excessive returns, and they're evaluating whether that customer is worth it, given their purchase and returns history, to keep them as a customer. There's a delicate balance here, because the goal should be on the front end to make the consumer experience a good one so that they keep whatever they buy. But they're also promoting, for example, certain shoe retailers and clothing retailers are saying, buy what you need in different sizes or what you want in different sizes, and we'll take everything back. So we're in a period that I expect to last for the next year or two of a mixed message. And on the one side, JCPenney and Best Buy and Amazon have to protect their company from these returns, which cost them a lot, but they're also giving the message about buy anything you want because we'll take care of you. So there's no easy answer here. They're going to get caught with some negative stories, but they're doing it understanding that it's costing them a lot to take everything back from everybody all the time. So JCPenney, again, they're not the only one. Best Buy has been doing it for years. So is Target, where they require a receipt. And if you don't have a receipt, they give you an exception rule 2 or 3 times. Now, the flip side of this, we hear the negative stories, but we have to understand it also means that they're tracking this data on you. And if you're a good customer with multiple purchases and no returns history, when you go up to the counter, even if you don't have a receipt, they're going to tend to make exceptions because they have that data on you. But we don't hear about those where the exceptions are granted easily. We hear about the ones where suddenly somebody was told that they couldn't. In fact, I heard that for the first time today regarding one of the largest orange box retailers in the home goods business, let's say, that they've now started tracking customers without a receipt, and they will start to block it. But they have to do something. It's a balance between making it a good customer experience and protecting your company from that product that may have come from a flea market because they liquidated it out the back door. It's a vicious cycle that's been created, and the data is going to be the solution that they're going to own on each one of us. And they're going to know that you may have never bought any products at their stores, and now you're trying to return something without a receipt. They're judging that to be fraudulent, and they're blocking you.
So Tony,
I know that's an extended answer, but I hope that go ahead, Scott.
Great perspective and great question, Janine. Tony, is it your opinion that we as consumers are better off with companies that do have effective returns management programs? Because that's what protects pricing in some of these retailers that are able to offer real competitive pricing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Another perspective on it, that ultimately the consumer pays for returns. Whether you pay for it in higher pricing or poorer service or poor product design in the future, unlimited returns cost us somewhere. And again, the e-tailers who were offering this unlimited policy, it's catching up to them now, but they used it as a sledgehammer to steal your business away from the retailers. So ultimately, we as consumers pay for it because freight costs are there, loss of value of the product is there. It is costing us all, and thank you for asking it that way, Scott. It's very true.
Terrific. Great question, Janine. Tony, thanks for sharing your perspective. Next question. So, Tony, you touched on a couple of different education opportunities related to reverse logistics, but what kind of certifications exist for reverse logistics, returns processing, et cetera?
A very good question, Scott. And the RLA offers extensive amounts of white papers and education and research, both online, in our events, in our conferences, and in some of our publications. Our magazine especially has important stories about what do these things mean? What do certifications mean? What's the dispositioning standards? What does that mean? There's a lot of informal education today. There's a lot of education being offered through the organizations like APICS as part of other education programs. There are very, very few universities offering a degree in reverse logistics. APU is one of them, American Public University. It's an online university. But most supply chain schools barely offer even a class in reverse logistics. And it's something that needs to be done more of. The RLA is having discussions with APICS about that type of programming. We also work with APU and other universities that are offering some reverse logistics courses, and we're giving that information to them. We also have a collection of professors and universities that are inside of RLA using information that we have, presenting it in their courses, and also giving us information to make available to reverse logistics managers. I would comment that no one goes out in the supply chain world and says, I want to be a reverse logistics director. I got pulled out of sales and marketing at Phillips and was told, go fix the returns problem. It's not considered real desirable. It's kind of like if you work in a retail store, the last job that you want is to be at the returns desk listening to people complain. That's been the history of the reverse logistics manager roles. The future is that you make a huge impact on the bottom line by finding ways to reduce returns, reduce reverse logistics costs, and improve asset recovery. So the formal training needs to be more prevalent. It's not yet. That's a goal. I took over the RLA as executive director in 2016. And as I said, I'm starting to talk with APICS and other organizations about offering formalized education and certification. It does not exist today as of yet. It's in the planning stages.
So Tony, everybody and their brother knows e-commerce. E-commerce is not just a hot word, but it's a hot aspect of industry. Do you feel that folks just don't make the connection between e-commerce and reverse logistics? Because we all know to execute on e-commerce, you have to be a great and very capable company that executes on reverse logistics.
Well, I think that the focus has been on forward supply chain. Fulfillment, same day is the goal. I mean, Amazon raised the bar a few years ago when they made 2-day a standard program for fulfillment, and they've gone to 1 day and same day. And the focus of all supply chain organizations has been, how do we get this done? So the reverse side has been in the background, but it's growing. It's like that little pile in the corner that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and suddenly it's visible, and people are like, oh, we have to take care of that too. I would say that the bigger supply chain or logistics organizations like the XPOs, UPS and FedExes of the world are focused on that now and finding ways to get more involvement there. It really needs to be part of every discussion in supply chain. It's interesting to me that the focus is on buying enough products, and when they buy enough products to have inventory on hand, they're building in somewhere in their head a 10% number perhaps, or a 20% number of extra inventory to carry to cover the returns that are going to come back. So it's interesting that companies will spend the money on that side without trying to find ways to reduce the returns, which would also reduce the inventory needs. So as supply chain becomes more encompassing, the reverse side will get more attention.
You know, 5 years ago, I had about a 1-year-old HP printer. It's one of their $200 printers. And within its first year, it began to malfunction. I got on the phone with them. They sent me a remanufactured printer, which it still works. It's on my desk right now. Still works great. And they had me ship the old one from the comfort of my home. They delivered a box to my front step, put it right back in the same box, just swapped them out. And that was really one of my early experiences with the power of reverse logistics. Now, you know, these days with Amazon, you know, being able to buy shoes, try them on, and send them back same day, and others. Who else out there beyond the HPs and Amazons? Who else would you put in the bucket of true industry leaders when it comes to reverse logistics?
I think my best, easiest answer would be any company that's a member of RLA. We have a membership page, and it shows companies like HP, Amazon, but also Dell, Acer, Cisco, Google, Home Depot, and Walmart. And those companies, it's real simple. I ask two questions usually, Scott. I talk to people about, what do you want a customer to do with a return? Do you have a policy? Do you have a strategy? Do you have a response for those customers who buy something and want to take it back? So that's question one. The second question is, who's in charge? And I ask people that all the time. But if you ask any member of RLA, any company that's a member, you ask them who's in charge, there's somebody in charge. And that's where it starts. That's where it starts. So those companies that are on the RLA membership page are companies that are focused. We mentioned many of their names, whether it's UPS, FedEx, XPO, and many of those on the transport side, but many of the manufacturers, and they are focused on holistic solutions, not just who's going to move it, but who's going to move it, who's going to fix it, clean it up, and help resell it.
Well, last question here, and you've actually touched on this in a couple different ways through the presentation and through our Q&A. I was going to ask you about, you know, why join and get involved in RLA, but I want to make sure we get in. We've got a great upcoming event that with you and your team's leadership, you've helped get on the docket. Talk about what we've got coming up in August.
So one of the things the RLA does, in addition to an annual conference, is to try to have a more regionalized seminar that includes usually a visit to a facility where returns are being processed. And we're very excited to say that in August, on August 16th, which is a Thursday, we will be at the Home Depot returns facility in McDonough, Georgia. And Home Depot has agreed to allow people to see the returns facility there. And the focus will be on the recycling aspects and the sustainability aspects of returns processing that Home Depot is very committed to. They have the centralized approach now, so it's a large facility. I know it's north of 250,000 square feet. And so that day we will have a presentation that will involve a speaker talking about recycling and sustainability from the academic world. We'll have the Home Depot manager who's focused on that responsibility because there's laws involved, there's hazardous materials processing involved. So we'll have one of the Home Depot people that's in charge of that presenting. We will have one of the sponsors involved in the Reverse Logistics Association presenting what solutions they have. We'll have a lunch, we'll have a tour, we'll finish up with a committee panel discussion for the recycling and sustainability area. And we're doing this in partnership with APICS Atlanta. We're very honored to do that. Very glad to be able to make this work in partnership with Home Depot. So that's August 16th. We follow up with other events through the year. Again, if you go on the rla.org page and register as a new user, you'll get the emails that tell you about all of these specialized events as well as the large global events.
Perfect. And we're looking forward to that event and appreciate your partnership there. So to our audience, again, you can learn a lot more about the Reverse Logistics Association by reaching out to Tony Sciarrotta. All of you will have his contact information and the follow-up information, but also check him out at rla.org. Memberships, learning experiences, webinars, great events, white papers, networking within the supply chain industry, a lot of great value by engaging with the Reverse Logistics Association. So thanks for that, Tony. Appreciate your time today. We're going to be concluding our session this afternoon on a few final items. First, we want to invite our audience to join us for one of our upcoming webinars. We have several intriguing sessions on the docket focused on things such as lip service leadership, the gender pay gap IQ, creating a culture that attracts top supply chain talent. That's going to be a good one. Learn more at apicsatlanta.org. Secondly, if you're in the state of Georgia and want to engage the next generation of supply chain leaders, we'd welcome you to join us for our Supply Chain 101 initiative, where we've been taking teams of volunteers in the elementary schools to talk supply chain with students. Since November 2017, we've engaged over 600 third, fourth, and fifth graders to establish, plant seeds about supply chain careers and opportunities in their minds. Great program. Reach out to us at APICS Atlanta if you want more information. Also, if you're a practitioner looking to gain a supply chain management certification, be sure to check out our APICS Atlanta CSCP and CLTD boot camps. We've got 2 great sessions coming up at Georgia Tech's Supply Chain and Logistics Institute in July. You can learn more at www.scl.georgiatech.edu. And a little mental note there, that slide says July 2019. That was my typo. Those boot camps actually take place next month, July 2018, in that last full month of July. Finally, feel free to reach out to me if there's anything else we can do to serve as a resource for you and your organization. You can reach me at EVP for Executive Vice President at apicsatlanta.org. Hey, Tony, before we conclude today's session, any final thoughts on your end?
I just want to thank everyone for paying attention, listening, asking some good questions, and tell you that reverse logistics is an amazing area of opportunity to be a hero at any organization that's out there. I know it happened for me, so I just invite you to sign up at rla.org. It's free. Start to see what's out there. There's tremendous career opportunities in reverse logistics today and more to come.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Tony. As we wrap up today, I want to give a big thanks to our guest speaker, Tony Sciarrotta, for this presentation and his wonderful insight. Big thanks to our sponsors again, APICS Atlanta and TalentStream. Of course, a big thank you to our audience for participating. On behalf of Supply Chain Now Radio, this is Scott Luton concluding today's episode. Have a wonderful week, and we hope to reconnect with you again real soon. Thanks, everybody.